going, it is with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce to you three local personalities. All three of these people were raised in the Delaware Valley. Congratulations. You know, in this business, we are nomads, right? We wander and go to different places, but it's so nice to see all three of them back with us, and I'm going to introduce Susan Schiller first, who's been director of news at KY since August of 2001. She graduated from Little Flower Catholic High School. She worked at CAU TV. She lives in Morristown, New Jersey, and she went to Lindenwold College in Missouri, but I'm so glad that she's back with us, and I'd like to introduce her first. We're going to ask all three of them to, make a short, maybe 2 or 3 minute statement on what Channel 3's news story is all about, and then when we finish talking, all three will open it up for questions. Let me introduce to you the news director of KYW-TV, Susan Schiller.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I was quite honored and somewhat surprised because generally, news directors are kind of boring. It's Yuki and Pat that really make the broadcast sing every day, and I just kind of try to keep the room on a steady, even course. For me, coming to Channel 3 was really the dream of a lifetime. As you know, I grew up here, grew up in the Northeast, went to St. Martin's, graduated from Little Flower. I know the importance of scholarship. That's why I went out to Lindenwood, I'm saying it wrong too, thinking of the Packville line. I went to a very small college in Missouri called Lindenwood College and University. It was actually one of the first stations in the country that started an FM radio station, and had a history of great broadcasters. Someone I went to school with was executive producer, first executive producer of Meet the Press, and had a lot of opportunity there. But eventually I found my way back home. I don't know, there's something about Philadelphia when I was in Missouri or New York. I just kept coming back here, as you can tell by my dotted resume of return trips. And I just want to make a note, because I heard the boo of the crowd when they said Morristown, New Jersey. I lived in Narberth and Bucks County previously in Philadelphia. But just a note on that, because my husband, he's unbelievable, and I do think that family support when you're in this business is extremely important. He was willing to make this move because I wanted his job so badly, but he did have one caveat, which was, honey, I've got to get on that New Jersey Turnpike to get back to New York, because his job takes him there often. So that's why we're in New Jersey, but actually it's been a pleasant surprise, and as you know, our ADI covers a huge swath of area here, and for me, it was probably the part of the Delaware Valley that I was least familiar with in many ways. I couldn't tell you how to get to Gibbsboro, or Voorhees, or Haddonfield, or Morristown, or Mount Holly, and now I can. So I feel like I have a little more of a connection with all of our viewers who live in South Jersey, and that's very important to me in terms of storytelling. A little bit about Eyewitness News. The two people who I'm sharing the dais with, I think, are two of the finest broadcasters that I've seen anywhere in television. That I've worked with both at the network and in other local markets. And I was really sort of struck by the fact that they were both here and that they were really sort of gave meaning to the word anchor. They were part of the team that truly anchored the news operation. And for me, making the big decision to take the leap to KYW, it was very important because I knew that when I came, and I know that you all know this, the station's number 3 in terms of the news ratings. There's been a lot of talent kind of in and out of the shop. And I came in with one sort of clear mandate in my mind. And that was that I felt that there had been a lot of change, and change is obviously part of the news business, and I have 2 big changes, and we'll make more changes in the months to come, I'm sure. But the bottom line is it was Eyewitness News, and when I watched some of the news coverage in the months preceding my taking the job, as we were talking, I sort of felt that the station and the news operation in particular had lost its way in terms of what we were doing to serve the viewer. There's nothing more local than local news. There's nothing more local than getting the news on and reacting quickly to breaking news. There's nothing more important to our daily lives than the weather and how we need to prepare in the car for certain weather conditions, address our children or whatever. So it's really not very complicated in my mind. You have to do the very best journalistic job you can with the news. You need to be responsive to the viewers. And I really sort of had a very simple message when I came in to both the managers who hired me and to the staff, which was, my goal is simple. We're going to be the best news operation in the city, and once we meet that mark, we're going to be the best news operation in the country. And I feel that sort of setting that mandate as journalists helps improve the news product and helps the viewers ultimately get the information that they need and on a timely basis and when they need it. It's something we've been working on for a year. We've made a lot of progress. We have more work to do, but I feel very confident that we're absolutely on the right road, and you know, viewers are starting to take notice, and I think that's a big issue. I think that people just didn't know. They were still seem confused, sort of when I talk to people about what network are you? I mean, they didn't often know that we were CBS. They still sort of thought of us as NBC sometimes. So we try to really sort of be very clear in sort of the mission, really let people know that we're talking about eyewitness news. It is one of the oldest, if not the oldest. I hate to say it for a fact. I have to double check the date actually against a couple of other stations in Pittsburgh. I believe we're the oldest eyewitness news station in the country. And what better brand is that? It's simple, it's direct, it's clear, and I just want to try to recapture in the public's mind what that signature eyewitness news really means, because in terms of the product, hopefully we're delivering that every day now.
Okay, thank you. We'll open it up to questions in just a few minutes. As Susan did mention, Pat Shiraki, talented and nice. And that's all. A tough combination. That is awful hard to beat. Now, she's also a local gal. She was raised in the Delaware Valley. She worked at WHAG in Hagerstown, Maryland, the TV station. She worked at Wham's Radio in Wilmington. And of course, she came to the Philadelphia area, anchoring now Eyewitness News at noon and 5. It's my pleasure to serve on the board of directors of the Easter Seal Society with Pat Shiraki. Pat has given herself so wholeheartedly to this organization. Easter Seals is so thrilled to have her with us. She hosts a golf tournament for Easter Seals. She's involved in a fashion show. She raises literally thousands, tens of thousands of dollars every time she turns around. She was the mushroom lady just a few weeks ago down at Kennett Square, again for the benefit of Easter Seals. And her dad was in the mushroom business, I know, so she's close to that. In fact, there's a joke there, but I won't mention it about being in radio is just like being a mushroom, right? They keep us in the dark, and well, that's another story. And anyway, Pat Shiraki is a local gal, again, who is so very, very talented and does such a nice job and offers of her services. She's got a bachelor's degree from Rosemont College. She was born in Chester County. She lives now in Marion with her husband, and we're so happy to have with us anchor newscaster Pat Shiraki.
Bill, you always do the loveliest introduction. Thank you so much. I must say, it really is so wonderful to be here with all of you, and especially to see some really great old friends. It's terrific for me, after being on the air here 20 years this year, to be able to go around and to know so many of you by name and reputation and experience and friendship. And really, it means an awful lot to me. It was interesting. I think this past year, for all of us as Americans, for all of us as broadcasters, has really been a pivotal year with the way that we cover news, the kind of news that we need to cover. I had the great opportunity to join Yuki at 5 o'clock, to wake up Beyond the Dark for the first time the morning of September the 10th. That was my first morning, my first day on air doing the noon and the 5 o'clock after a long time assignment doing the early morning. And Yuki and I were, because we get along so well, and we really love each other. We think sometimes that we were twins separated at birth. And we've had such a great relationship over the years, and we were talking in terms of, well, we can really bring some of that energy and some of that excitement and really good-natured fun that we had kind of developed together on air as on-air teammates in the early morning. We figured we could bring that to 5 o'clock. And so we started that show 5 o'clock on September the 10th, fully focused on being that kind of upbeat personality. And then we all know what happened September the 11th. And it really changed how we needed to approach the news with far more seriousness, and how much more important it was for those of you who are watching to see us as mediators of very important information. Now, we don't put together a newscast without great leadership. At that moment of September the 11th, when we, all watching the networks and seeing planes flying in the buildings and the buildings collapsing, Susan had been on board for about 3 weeks. I think that was really about it. And we had had a series of other news directors who were nowhere near as gifted as Susan, nor with the experience that she had with the connections, of course, with the network. She had been in local news, but then in network news, so that gave her a very unique point of view for us. So she was out in the middle of the newsroom saying, okay, well, we need to do this, and we need to do that, and who can do this? And she didn't even know how the systems operated at that point. But we pulled together in our grief, we pulled together in our professionalism, everybody took on extra responsibilities, and we got through that day as a news operation. And we got through the end of that day as Americans. And I remember standing in the newsroom at about 20 to 12 that night, and everybody had been on duty, everybody had been working so hard, and Susan paused for a minute and she said, "You all did a really good job." And what was interesting to me was we really did feel exhausted and proud of what we had accomplished that day. But I had said, "So did you." And with that, the newsroom burst into applause. And I don't know the last time I had ever seen a newsroom burst into applause for a news director, especially after that kind of thing. So I guess in terms of where Channel 3 is going, one of the things that has really been important is to find really strong leadership. I believe that we really have found that in our news director. And then the decisions that she has been able to make for us also, with other people hired in, has also made a big difference. So in 20 years, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of people come and go. In fact, Peter Dunn, I do call him Peter Gunn on occasion, but Peter Dunn, our new general manager, is my 10th. In 20 years, my 10th general manager. So what becomes important? Bill makes a comment about my involvement in the community. Yuki has been equally involved. What is important? The important centerpiece, when you have management that changes, the important centerpiece for me is community. And it is the relationship with the viewer. And it is supporting advocacy for people who need advocacy. It is not just providing news and information, but it's being involved in the community. And so as a result, this is my hometown. So for me, my philosophy and my mandate within myself of my own career has been to carve out the relationship with the viewer and to serve the viewer in the best way that I possibly can. And that's not just grabbing a script from a writer or a producer and sitting in front of a teleprompter and reading it. So, I mean, if there's a relationship that has been able to develop for me over these 20 years, I think it's been because the viewer has been so kind in its response to my commitment. And I think Yuki really reflects that as well.
All right, Pat, thank you very much. I worked at Channel 6 and was living in West Philadelphia, Yuki Washington was being raised in West Philadelphia at that exact same time. Yuki, again, a local guy, so happy to have him with us. He went to Dover High School in Delaware. He sang with the Philadelphia Boys Choir. How about that? Went all over the world with the Philadelphia Boys Choir. He came to our attention here in the Delaware Valley as a sports anchor, and then moved into anchoring the news. He's living now in Wilmington, Delaware. So again, we've got local. And isn't it nice to know that they don't say Lancaster when they're talking about Lancaster, Pennsylvania? That's because they know from where they speak. Ladies and gentlemen, Yuki Washington.
First, giving honor to God. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having all of us here. We're really looking forward to answering your questions and telling you about the industry as we have it now. And I'd like to thank all of you, first of all, for making the industry what it is today. A lot of you are here now. I see a lot of faces that I recognize, as Pat mentioned. Hey, Joe, how you doing? I didn't see you when I first walked in. And it's because of you why we are where we are today. And we appreciate it. As Bill mentioned, I go way back, born and raised in West Philadelphia. My mother taught at West Philadelphia High. My sister went to Girls High. I went to the Lee School right across the street from West Philly High. And so I go way back. I go back to when I was in first grade watching Gunner Back on television. So I go way back, and I feel like I've been a part of this organization for quite a long time, and I thank you for setting the stones for us so we can go even further, maybe set a pathway for this young man right here. That's what it's all about. But I've been in the news division now about 6 years. I believe it's been 6 years. And I think I've got a long way to go. I still look at myself as a rookie, being a rookie, but sitting beside a lady like Pat Cherokee and having the guidance and leadership like Susan Schiller delivers to our station. I think we're in a good pathway now for our station. We're going to do a lot of good things. We have a lot of veteran leadership at Channel 3 with the veteran reporters and anchors that we have. We have a lot of young, fresh talent as well that I'm sure some of you have seen on the air. And putting that all together, plus the technicians, the writers, the producers, all the way down to the interns, I think the best is yet to come when it comes to KYW TV3. And hopefully I will be a part of that for quite a long time. As I mentioned, I came from sports, so I was in sports for 10 years in the city before I transferred to the news division. So time's flying. But thanks to all of your efforts, we have a positive future. All the stations in town do a great job when it comes to getting the message out to our public, our viewing public. And I'm just so proud to be a part of that. But I could go on forever, but I'm not. I want to hear your questions. You may have some questions for us about our backgrounds, about our news product, things that we do at KYW, things we've done as individuals. So let's, if we could, Bill, open the floor.
Just raise your hand if you got a question and stand up and go ahead and ask it.
Susan, we are very impressed, as you are, Yuki and Pat's ability. And I wonder why you don't write the scripts on the air, minus 10% of the wordage, and let them, with their intelligence, charm, and perception, give them a chance to talk on their own.
You check and waiting.
Well, I would agree with you that our scripts are overwritten. I have that conversation today. I think you're right. I don't think that the news operation, I don't think most news operations leave enough time in for sort of unbridled kind of chat. I think that the reason is that, and I think it goes back to September 11th, at least at our station, we had so much information to give on, constantly updating information. We couldn't get it on the air fast enough before it was changing. And I think that it set in motion a pattern of, lots of information, lots of news, advocacy information, helplines, doctors' information, all kinds of things. And as we sort of slowly wound down from that, kind of the way we put it on the air continued to some extent. I also think, to be perfectly frank, that with Eyewitness News, there had been a period of time where the station had tried some alternative programming, especially at 5 o'clock. They had you know, things that there were acts outside and things like that. Totally the wrong tone. I mean, I don't know if we had been doing that kind of show, we'd already started to change it when 9/11 happened. But we were lucky because we were sort of already, the transition had already been underway. If some of the broadcasts I was seeing, for example, you know, mud baths live on the plaza at 5 o'clock, and all of a sudden, it's September 11th, it would have seemed, it was very hard to kind of make that left turn and be viewed as a credible news operation. We'd already sort of started the transition. So, as I came in and sort of changed some things, kept some certainly softer, more information-based information, but, you know, we kind of eliminated, like, I remember Yuki was doing, and I love the Philadelphia Zoo, so don't misunderstand me here, but I said to Yuki one day, he was outside, he was doing a pet segment, and he had a black tarantula. And I called him in and I said, Yuki, I said, you got a black tarantula like all over your head. It's 5 o'clock, like moms are making dinner. What? I said, aren't there any other animals? He said, Susan, there's only one black bear left at the Philadelphia Zoo that I haven't interviewed on live TV at 5 o'clock. So I said, you know what, I think maybe we need to rethink this. And that was literally days before 9/11. So we didn't really ever rethink it or revisit it. It just sort of ended and we, you know, kind of moved on. The other thing you fight is sort of the happy chat notion, which was extremely popular way back when, where the anchors were kind of goofy and silly, and it was irrelevant to, you know, a lot of people's lives. People are busy. You know, give me the weather, give me the traffic, give me what's new. Are we going to war with Iraq or not? I mean, you know, a lot of people want that information. And one thing that we found, because there's a whole, clearly there are certain demographics that watch different shows at different times. And one of the things that we've seen has been that the more typically 5 o'clock audience, you know, a lot of people think it's all, you know, a lot of soccer moms. Yes, there are soccer moms watching the show. There are not a lot of working men watching the 5 o'clock news because they're driving home from work. Yeah, they might be watching the 6, but they're not always seeing the 5. The number of viewers who may be retired or, you know, at-home people that switched to cable news in the aftermath of 9/11 is humongous. It was like triple. It's like that audience found cable news. And maybe it also was a confluence of how cable kind of came into the Philadelphia market and all that. But what that says to us is that people really want the information. And there are a lot of other places where they can watch a segment on, you know, how to improve how to waterproof your deck. They're going to go to House and Garden Television. There are a lot of other places for that kind of information. So it's you know, you really have to look at everything. And that's why it became very newsy. But we do try to give them a little bit of time. And sometimes they just take it. Don't let them take anything.
And it's really true. We do. We just
we have to keep the human element.
Opportunity.
Yeah, we make it a point, I think, some things that have made us successful over the years as a team is we like to keep the human element in it as well, but not to a point where it gets to the happy chat, the happy talk. We want people, that's what people recognize with us when we go out in the street. Oh, I remember when we said this, Pat said that, and Pat said this to you, but they also remember the news of the day that we gave them. So we have a little bit of the human element in there. I mean, we're all humans. We have to, you know, if we have a light moment, we're going to take advantage of it.
It was interesting, even on the anniversary of September the 11th, Yuki and Larry and I did a 3 o'clock special, which we were very proud of the way that the piece came together. And in the middle of it, Yuki and I did have that a little bit more flexibility with chatting because we had no commercial breaks that day. And in the middle of that, I really got teary. And I turned to the camera and I made a comment about, you know, I'm sorry that I'm becoming so emotional about this.
And my response was, that's quite all right, because everybody, it's natural. Everybody's doing it.
And we had the opportunity to chat with, you know, I'm so surprised that my emotion is still so high up. I wasn't really expecting that to happen. And so we had that opportunity to kind of show it. But that's our humanity kind of coming through, not forced or faked. Bobby?
Well, this is the first time I'm allowed to question the news director without me said to, what are you questioning me? I used to work for Action News here for 33 years. I just retired. You mentioned something about more information locally. I still noticed that all the news, and this is one of the ideas I submitted, but of course I was a photographer, what do I know? I noticed that all the news still, 5 and 6 o'clock, still mix in national news. When they have to, and But I would like to see Mayor Street says, hey, us brothers were running the city, us brothers and sisters are running the city. Go into that, go into depth into that. I'd like to see more in depth between 5 and 6 o'clock of our own local news, rather than mixing local. Usually we do mix local and national at 6 to 6:30 all the time. But I think 5 o'clock to 6 should be the in-depth of our local news, the tax increase. That should be more in depth. I think more people, like you said, they want more information. Try it. Somebody's got to try it. Start talking about those taxes. Start talking about the mayor. Go after the 2 governors who are butting heads right now. But you don't see, I didn't even know there was an election until 3 weeks ago, you know. But that's true. Yeah, but that's what I'd like to see, then more of local being in depth.
That's a tough balance.
I agree. I think you have a valid issues there. I think we probably do more sort of harder edge things than some of our, than our competitors. We have a segment called Shame on You, which we go after unscrupulous business people or government official or whatever, which we often run at 11 o'clock news, which is a pretty big chunk of change on the 11 o'clock news. We do pretty hard-hitting consumer segments with Paul Moriarty. Stephanie Stoll is our health correspondent. In terms of the in-depth coverage, it's a fine balance because when you, for example, the city taxes, they're a huge issue for people who live in Philadelphia. But not everybody that we really need to watch us lives in the city. So it's really a double-edged sword in terms of keeping eyeballs on the set. And that ultimately is a reality of the business today. Where, I have all the respect in the world for Neil Lehr, but they would not be producing that kind of show, I don't think, in a local news environment where ratings are, kind of the father-son of ratings. It's a double-edged sword, and you have to balance your news coverage with also making sure that you're covering the stories that you need, but you're not alienating a big segment of viewers because maybe they're not living in the city. So we do try to do in-depth stories. We try to look at opportunities that have a broad appeal. We try to look at stories, for example, about somebody who's really unscrupulous. Ren Scott, in fact, just won an Emmy.
Shame on You.
This weekend for Shame on You. It was about a guy who was, he had a big business here, and allegedly he has been, not living up to his advertisement of helping you grow hair. He's basically giving people, a toupee, but with super glue on it. I mean, that's ultimately what we set up to do scientific analysis, and that's what they said it was. The point is that even if you don't have that problem, people are just kind of outraged that somebody would be capitalizing on another person's worry. And it still has broad appeal, but it was a very in-depth report. I mean, he went after all the legal documents, the Better Business Bureau, the Attorney General, and, questioning,
And he just won an award, didn't he, Ren?
Just won the Emmy. Yeah.
Yes.
So we actually won for investigative journalism. Paul Moriarty won the award for investigative journalism. So I think that there is a place for it, but I think that in today's environment, you have to really, kind of balance that with keeping people to watch. And I don't think that Yuki and Pat would disagree with me if I walked in and said, okay, here's what I want to do. 5 o'clock, we're going to do all in-depth stuff. I don't know that they would think that that's exactly the answer either, although we do try to look at stories on an editorial basis and give some stories more time. On 9/11 day, Walt Hunter did an investigation into City Hall and where he could go. He was not him, he was a photographer and a producer, and they went in, and Walt went in too, at times when people recognize Walt, with an undercover camera. And let me tell you, they never got stopped. And it was 3.5 minutes of a story, which is a long time these days in the local news. It's longer than most network pieces. So it's a balancing act, and I would be the first to...
I have a question for Yuki from his background. Yuki, on Sunday, what team is going to show up? The Eagles that played Washington or the Eagles that played Tennessee?
Oh, gee, let's hope the Eagles have played Washington. I still am involved a little bit in the sports world. I'm a fan now instead of a reporter. I can be a fan, and I really enjoy that. But I had a little balance, a weird balance of that on Monday night. And I'm sure some of you saw the game. We do watch the competitive jump six. We do watch it. But some of you may have seen the game, and then after midnight, they had the incident on the field with the, as Al Michaels described, the foreign spray. So I'm sitting there, and after midnight, and I hear Al Michaels say a foreign spray on the field, and everybody's on the field. I automatically jump up, start looking for a suit and my earpiece, because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on, especially in the times that we live in now. You can't be too sure. But I try to balance it all. I'm still a fan, so I was watching the game, but also that news side of me is in it as well. But the Eagles, I think they can go a long way this year. I'm not as close to it now as Beasley Reese in our sports department happen to be, but I'm still a fan, and I love every sports, especially the younger sports when it comes to the high schools and the elementary schools, and seeing the young kids come up, because sports is still pure at that age. It's, it's not about the money, it's not about, the big bucks, if you will. But I'm always going to be a sports fan. But
Paul, you
have
had a
that
question?
delicate balance.
Now that Mark Howard is joining your staff,
Who?
how will that affect the mix? Is Larry going to continue with the station, and is he going to go into the afternoon mix?
Exclusively.
Toughest question of the day.
I think when Pat, if your answer the answer would be the same. Larry has a contract, and we'd love him to stay. And I think that he's a tremendous asset to the news operation. I can tell you that I've worked with Larry before. I have nothing but the deepest regard for Larry as a journalist and as the man he is. He's been a tremendous friend to me through the years of my career. I think at this point, the truthful answer is it's unresolved. But as long as I'm running KYW, I would love to have Larry be a part of my team.
And we're going to salute him here as the Person of the Year in November.
Right.
And I'll be straight up with you. Larry is a little disappointed, obviously.
Oh.
Just a little disappointed. But he is a true professional, and he's a team player. And he knows when Mark Howard comes, and he's there, and our entire team is together, we're going to do the best we can to get the product on the air. So he's definitely a team player.
Yeah, and our hope really is that on an emotional level, that Larry will be able to do the 6 and then also to do some other special projects he brings. The reason why you're honoring him in November, he has a very rare point of view because of being in the marketplace for so many years. We also, though, are enthusiastic about some of the changes that are going to happen, not just because Mark is a real professional too and has served his station really beautifully over the years. But there's something that comes with all of that those of you who have been in the business for a long time will understand, and that is with Mark and a new management group that's even above Peter Dunn, who's our general manager, we get a bigger commitment in terms of money for support and resources and promotional opportunities. And that can only help us, because that will mean that not only does Mark get promoted as the new 11 o'clock anchorman, but that also means Pat and Yuki and Larry and Denise and our morning and our weekend team and our investigative reporters will also get that promotion as well. And so we all are hoping to be able to benefit. Because one of the things that has happened in terms of, Susan was referencing cable, when all of you were in the active parts of your careers, there were 3 television stations in town. And then we had 3 Bs and 3 Us, and that was it. So the competition was not the same as what it is today. So advertising really is going to make a big difference for us to be able to share, I believe, what it is we are about.
Personally, I'm looking forward to working with both of those men on a personal note. They've been in the market a very long time, since the 70s, 60s, if you will, and just having both of those men, for me personally, to learn from and to work with. I am totally looking forward to this opportunity, and I think, I haven't talked with Mark yet, but I know Larry feels the same way as far as I'm concerned, as an up-and-coming, hopefully, anchor in this market.
2 more questions in the back.
Yuki, what's Yuki's private use?
Well, thank you for coming. Have a nice day. We have to leave now. I believe the question was, why is it Yuki?
What was the question?
Why is it
Where did Yuki come from?
Oh, okay.
What's your real first name? I know it.
My given name on my birth certificate is Ulysses Samuel Washington III. So my mother and father had a friend by the same name, Ulysses, when I was coming up. And his nickname, his friend, was Yuck. Mom didn't want to call me Yuck. So Yuck turned into Yuke, which turned into Yuki, and I've had it ever since I was a baby. But and it's one of those names where you hear it, people recognize it. It's been around for a while, so I think, unless Susan has other ideas, I think we're going to stick.
One last question. Just want to throw this around on the early news that I have experienced in all channels. You have a teasing, alter the news, comes to the end, and it's a blur. And during the 5 to 6 o'clock, why couldn't, as the other gentleman said, more in-depth, and have the things like the weather or the traffic run on a crawler underneath, so it's constantly up on the screen, that people can see it, and you don't always have to go back and waste time with that. You can go into other harder-hitting stories in more depth.
You're talking about in the morning?
No, like 5 to 6 in the afternoon.
We don't do traffic. We currently do not do traffic in the afternoon. Well, I don't think we give too much weather. I mean, we generally do weather in the first block if there's weather. Ironically, a lot of people like the fact that we do a little more weather than normal in the 5 o'clock news. For some of our viewers, that actually appeals to them. So,
and the weather has moved up. In the past 3 years, it used to be the last story, and it kept moving up. It's what it may lead, or sometimes.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, because Herb Clark is in the room, and I don't want to embarrass him, but I know that there were many nights when he would come over to me and say, you know, this is really big, and this is very important, and I need more time, and I'd be like, Herb, I don't have, I've got all this news. If I only had listened more to Herb at the time. You know, I think that everybody's really realized, and I think that weather forecasters like Herb have sort of always been saying to the news people, look, this is really important information. You know, I get tons of calls. You need to give me more time. You should really think about putting this higher. I just think we were slow kind of listening. But absolutely in Philadelphia, weather is a very big component of the news competition here, and in many ways, justifiably so. Sometimes I think we all get a little bit schizophrenic about it, but I think overall it is information people really need.
As far as the teasing element, I'm not sure what the other stations in the market are doing, but I know when we tease a story, we try to make it a story that we bring back later that has some substance. There's a reason why we tease it. We want you to watch this particular story. And as far as the crawls on the screen, I have a thing I call the CNN distraction element.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it gets a little bit too busy, a little bit too much to watch. So there's a fine line, yeah.
For some, not everybody can see the crawls that well, and in the morning it's a different kind of audience, so you have to analyze that.
And we want you to pay attention to what the anchors say. Cal?
Yeah, just one more. I'm glad you mentioned Walt Hunter. I can tell you that your competitors consider Walt Hunter a shining star in what he does. I refer to him as the Brian Ross of Delaware Valley. He should make Brian his money. The reason, as you know, for his extraordinary success at what he does is he has contacts over the years in the Philadelphia Police Department that at times he gets information before the Public Affairs Department at the Philadelphia Police get it.
I'm well aware of that.
And we love that part, Cal. It helps us with formatting the show.
Let me just say this about Walt, and with Pat and Nikki here, because Walt's been at Eyewitness News for about 20 years too.
20 years.
And I stand corrected here because Eyewitness News, we are the first in 1965. I should have double-checked this fact before I looked at the door. I'm sorry, somebody handed me the card. Walt is an integral part of our operation, and I always think about Walt, who is just such a stellar reporter. I mean, just nobody can compare to the kind of stories that Walt can get, how quickly he can turn a story and get it on the air. And I see a lot of young people coming up, and they want to be anchors. They want to be sports anchors. They want to, go do MTV. And I don't always meet that many young people who really want to be reporters, who want to dig up a story and get it on television. And I just think that there's such opportunity there. And I think sometimes that the reporters who really work so hard in the field don't always get the acknowledgement that they deserve in terms of their contribution to the news operation every day. You know, we have a very public team, and they're very critical to the operation, but I'm really proud of our reporters, and I think that when you look at Pat and Yuki and Walt, Larry Kane, and as Yuki expressed, you know, the thrill that we have that Mark Howard is coming, because if anybody had told me a year ago that we would have an opportunity that Mark Howard would want to, you know, come over and join our team, I would have been very surprised, and as it became a reality, who wouldn't want a player like that on your team? I mean, who wouldn't want a player of that caliber on your team? You know, our goal is to be the best in the city, and all of our anchor teams, and Denise has done a terrific job up in New York on 9/11 coverage and everything. I feel we're really, really fortunate, and are really poised to take it to the next level with a big help from
Last question, Pat Delsey.
Do you see any major changes on the horizon insofar as television news broadcasting is concerned? There is rumor, and there have been already beginnings of the news on the hour and a half hour in headline form on some TV stations in some major markets. Is that anything that you see developing insofar as touching the news on a regular basis through the day, other than the morning and afternoon times?
Well, Fox already does some of that here in the market. I think it's a combination of factors. It's partly revenue issues. I would be thrilled to produce a food, news update, but they got to keep the lights on. So whenever I ask for more news time, I got to go, okie dokie, you got a lot of time every week. I don't know that that's an immediate thing here. I know that we try to take every opportunity. I mean, I will tell you that in the old days, you run a promo, I don't know how often any of you were running around at the last minute, like grabbing a promo to try to get 30 seconds of live TV to go on live just to do some sort of breaking news story. And we have the advantage of technology today, which allows us to go on the air with breaking news immediately, with technology where you can leave programming up and show some horrific, I mean, if you have a car accident, it's not the car accident per se, but it's caused an 11-mile backup on the Blue Route. We have that ability to get that on the air and not lose the program. So in some ways, we're less dependent on the headline of the half hour than we were on our station even a year ago. But we look for every opportunity, and if I could do it, I certainly would take the opportunity, because I do know one thing. The more news you do, the more people get used to seeing the news, and they see your team, and that all helps.
We want to thank our guests. Thank you very much for coming.